मेरा नाम है शाहिद इकबाल और मैं हूँ होस्ट पाकिस्तानी अमेरिकन क्रिएटिव शो का। हमारे शो के डायरेक्टर है सैयद काशिफ। सीज़न 3 के एपिसोड 7 में हम आपकी मुलाकात करवाएंगे सामिया नज़ीर से। तो आइए सुनते हैं सामिया की कहानी सामिया की ज़बानी। बात शुरू करते हैं आपसे। तो सामिया, थोड़ा सा बताइए हमारी ऑडियंसेस को कि कहाँ से शुरू हुआ, क्या इंस्पिरेशन थी, घर वालों ने मना किया, डांटा या इनकरेज किया? क्या जर्नी था आपका?
No, actually, it was, I don't know, I think I just fell into it. मैं पहले करती थी art, obviously it's like a cliche, बचपन से मैं painting करते आई हूँ, and then I got an economics degree. But for some reason, I got a little more, reading into the Quran, and I thought, oh, forget the portraits and the scenery or still life, I will do Arabic calligraphy. So I started doing Arabic calligraphy, and as much as I loved art and I thought I would be serious about it, I think it was really the Quranic calligraphy, Islamic, that really took me places. I mean, I don't think if I was a portraiture or a still life or a surrealist, jo bhi hota hai, modern art mein, I would have done as well as I have. I couldn't even really quite honestly imagine. So, and actually, jab maine shuru kiya, I had the desire to showcase as well. So at that time, that was more than 10 years ago, there was not much opportunity. So I would load up my, SUV and drive to Cleveland, I think, and I drove to Georgia, and I was driving all over the country with my paintings in my car on my own. And now, shukr Allah, there is such a, foundation of interest been created over here that I really basically the need to take it all over the country is it's not necessary right now. So shukr Allah ka, as you said, कि हमारे इसी community में इतने सारे लोग हैं that they're creative, and everyone has I think contributed to that interest. I think if it was just one person, it wouldn't have worked, but it's like the community that has, created that foundation of interest. So it's a collective thing for sure.
Wonderful. Yeah. So if you don't mind me asking you, would you elaborate a little bit more कि वो community में organizations हैं, funding है, venues हैं? What are those elements that made this easy for us now than before?
Well, I think you started a foundation, I think organization, the Indus Arts, and I've participated in that.
Yes.
I've also participated in Islamic Arts, which I helped found as well. And beyond that too, before Islamic Arts, I think we had a museum show, and it was called Building Bridges. Wow. And I think that really started the interest in, the librarian who helped ask for the fund, who was not a Muslim, and the curator who was a Hispanic American. Yeah. So I think those little things helped start these things, quite honestly. And the outside interest, the little outside interest, and the few artists who participated went on to bigger things. So yeah.
तो थोड़ा सा उसके बारे में बताइए कि ये जो outside interest है, looking other communities looking at us.
Yes.
How has that evolved over time?
I think that was at a starvation level. I think after 9/11, Muslims really got a little motivated to showcase what we are. We started, participating, and art was very little. And they are very starved. I can tell you the outside people, and they really, really want to know. So whoever can, जो भी showcase or broadcast or showcase कर सकता है कि हम मुसलमान क्या हैं, I would really encourage them, whatever field they are, an arts field or anything, cooking even, or anything whatsoever. So I think people are very starved, and as Muslims, as Pakistanis, it's our duty to do that. Yeah. Really, it really is our duty to showcase what we are, just not within the community for our kids or anything. That's very important too, but I think for the greater community too, so they understand and they care. They're comfortable to be with us. That's, when we did the Islamic Arts, we had all kinds of people come in, and some of them, were like we were scared to walk into the masjid, quite honestly. They were scared to walk into the mosque. The neighborhood that mosque is in, that was the first time some of the people in the neighborhood came into the mosque.
There you go.
So, I think it is very important to keep all these things up, even yours as a cultural show. As Pakistanis, we are, by default, majority of us are Muslims. Not everyone, but, majority of us are. So we should just showcase, even, people have bad views about Pakistanis or what they are about or anything. So it's, very important.
Absolutely. And I think, if you don't mind me sharing one element is कि जब मैं एक फिल्म बना रहा था तो उस फिल्म में बहुत ही डाइवर्स कास्ट थी. उसके अंदर कॉकेशियंस भी थे, अफ्रीकन अमेरिकन भी थे, देसीज भी, अरब्स भी. तो बजट हमारे पास ज़ीरो होता है आमतौर पे. तो आई जस्ट हैपन टू आस्क सम ऑफ आवर कॉकेशियन फ्रेंड्स कि भाई it's a Pakistani American film, ठीक है. My friends are helping me because they are my friends. You're not my friend. Why are you so interested in this? And I got the most surprising answer. They said, when we hear about Pakistanis, we either know a doctor or a cab driver. Nothing in between.
Yeah.
So they said, if once you said that you're making a film, even if you give us pizza and Coke, we'll work for you.
Wow, that's very nice.
So I think, और आपने भी interfaith में दूसरी activities में हिस्सा लिया है. So what are some of the stories or anecdotal evidence you can tell us about how are these activities actually helping bridge that gap between communities?
Wow, I think we're changing minds. They have a narrative already. People already have a narrative, which is from the media, which is very negative. And that negative, we have to step in, everyone really step in and proclaim what we are. They can like you on an individual level. My friends all, even jo bhi interfaith pe bhi jete, they would like me, but then they would be like Islam, like the greater Islam. And so just you can be liked, and that's great, but I think you should, showcase the greater Islam, Pakistani, or the Muslim world, or whatever, whatever you want to showcase, you should, beyond your own self. And that's very hard within our community because we're very into self-promotion and it just stops there. So, to think of something bigger than yourself is really, hard. But बहुत सारे, I think, now I have started the Hijabi Project 101, which is to interview Hijabi women, औरतें जो hijab पहनती हैं, because there's so much misunderstanding. When I started doing these shows, they would ask me, oh, why don't you cover your hair? I thought all Muslim women had to cover their hair. And are they forced to do it? There was 101 questions.
There are misunderstandings from outside and there are misunderstandings from within.
Absolutely. I'll tell you a little bit. So,
Please do.
Yes. So I started that and, there was some misunderstanding. So I did 4. And then I thought, and I did, basically a documentary. Right. And I invited all interfaith people, and they were, they were really impressed by it. But they said, oh, these are just the 4 girls, and they could nitpick. कि चलो 4 लड़कियां हैं खाली. So I thought, you know what, मैं 4 पे नहीं छोड़ती. मैं 100 बनाती हूँ, फिर देखती हूँ कि ये लोग क्या कहेंगे. 100 तो नहीं हो सकती कि बिल्कुल, forced, and beyond that. I can't go physically, I think, but interviewing wise. But this is a long-term project for me, and I'm taking it very casually. I don't want fillers or just to fill the numbers. Good quality stories as they come by. But I think that is very important because that really did change their minds about what hijab is and what the hijabi women are, and they're not really forced to do it, and it's very voluntary. And, after that, the Iran thing happened, that, they're forcing women to wear the hijab. So that narrative is true, and this narrative is true, and we need this narrative as well to say not only that narrative is true. And I don't wear hijab personally, but, it's... they're my sisters, just like the ones who don't wear my hijab. But I think that was one thing I think that came out of my interaction in the interfaith community. Yeah.
So did you find these subject of your documentary easy to find, easy to talk to? Are they easily opening up? Or
No.
was
It
that
was very
process?
hard. I just basically sent out messages to people, can you interview? And they were like, who are you? That was it. I think I sent out quite a few, and there was like only 4. And I think jo Allah Miya chahta tha aa gaya, I think, 'cause they kind of, they built on themselves. And the last one was, very emotional, and it just got very emotional to the end. So it was like the pitch was already chosen by the higher power for sure, because I did not, I was like, take it, Tomaja, and I didn't know anyone's stories, quite honestly. 2 of the girls I had worked in the art society with, but I had never put a mic to them and said, okay, batao ye, because they would been like, get away. It was a bit nosy. And I think that is another thing, that people who are non-Muslim or even Muslim don't go up to someone and say, kya aap kyun pehnti hain? Why are you wearing it? Because they feel like they're being intrusive.
Right.
So with this interview, that is like diffused. The women are telling the story themselves. So yeah.
But then now you know that in France, they have made this law that in public schools or public universities, women cannot wear hijab.
Yeah, and apparently that is number 1 place that it's viewed from as well, because people from France are viewing it. So and we need to definitely put it out, because YouTube goes internationally, globally. And so whatever message I put out in America or produce over here can be, and it is viewed from France, number 1 country, where you can see, algorithm and all the stats. You can see that's like one of the number 1 countries outside America that it's being viewed from.
Wonderful. No, I had known about this project of yours. And I think it started before the pandemic, right?
I did the interviews before the pandemic, and then I obviously couldn't show it on the theater during the pandemic, so it was viewed after the pandemic.
So now it's on YouTube?
Yeah, now it's on YouTube. The 4 documentaries, and there's other girls as well. I had some health issues in the morning, in the summer, so I stopped, and inshallah I will resume it again. So
Wonderful. Yeah. So itne sare projects hai, Samia, to what's that process? How do you pick on these projects? Or
I don't think I pick on them, quite honestly. If you think about it, I was painting, then I was reading the Quran, then I was painting Quranic calligraphy, and then I was doing shows, and then I was interacting, and then I thought, I'll do the Hijabi Project. And I feel like, it's just something I really don't pick. I'm just going around I can connect the dots after I've done it, but I think there's no strategic planning on my part. So, but I'm open, and I think, just the opportunities that's presented itself has just made me hopeful for the future, for everyone, really. It's just, there's a lot of scope out there to do a lot of things.
Absolutely. So tell us, how do you balance this Muslim identity and this Pakistani identity, or the background? Because हमारा भी जो मुगल आर्ट है, मिनिएचर आर्ट है, ट्रक आर्ट है, the दूसरे forms हैं, वो भी अच्छे खासे heavy हैं in their, So how do you balance that, or that's not an issue?
No, I love Pakistani art. I like I absolutely love truck art. Everything, handicrafts, everything. I used to go to Pakistan and buy all the ajraks and susi, and it's really beautiful. It's very colorful, and it's very meaningful. We take it for granted.
We take it for granted.
Yeah, because we've had it in the house. But you know what? But it's a lot of, I wish people would document that, because that's a dying art. People are moving into cities and not doing those things anymore. So they need to be documented. I hope somebody in Pakistan is, doing that. So, but yeah, I love my Pakistani identity, and I do a lot of truck art as well. So I make it my own. I'm over here, so it's like Houston and Pakistan mix and everything.
Wonderful. Well, Samia, बहुत मजा आया आपसे बात करके.
Thank you.
और I hope के time is the only enemy, as I say. So would you be interested in having a second?
Absolutely, definitely. Yeah. I do the interviewing, as I said. I don't know how I am as an interviewee. So, all the things I tell them not to do, I'm probably doing. But
I think that's one of the good part about this show is that we are open for experimenting.
Okay.
So we don't find that offensive or derogatory. We experiment with things.
Okay.
And if it works, it works. If it doesn't, we learn something.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
for having us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you.